The air in the sanctuary was thick with perfume and a false, cheerful energy. The modern Pentecostal choir had just finished a lively number, their claps still echoing. Rows of guests buzzed with excitement, their smiles wide and genuine. On the surface, it was a perfect day. But the bride was late. Only by 3 minutes, but enough for a ripple of curious glances toward the closed doors. The youth pastor, set to officiate, kept smoothing his tie. A nervous tick disguised his preparation. Then the doors swung open. She didn't have a grand entrance. She walked in alone, pace steady, her face a calm mask beneath her veil. The classic white gown flowed around her, the bouquet trembled slightly in her grip. To the guests, it was beautiful. To her, it was a weapon. The groom stood at the altar, his smile tight. The youth pastor beamed, though his eyes held a flicker of unease. A soft murmur of admiration swept through the congregation. So beautiful! What a blessed day! She continued her slow march down the aisle, past smiling faces, until she stood directly between the two men. The music faded. Instead of turning to the groom, she faced the crowd. Her voice, amplified by the microphone, was eerily calm. "You know," she began, "they say the truth will set you free." She glanced at the youth pastor, then at her fiancé, whose smile had vanished. "I just never thought I'd find it in a storage closet 30 minutes before my vows." A collective inhale sucked the air from the room. The groom shook his head, a silent, desperate plea. The youth pastor stepped forward, hands raised, as if to calm a spooked animal. "Kendra, my dear, perhaps we should—" She didn't let him finish. She reached into her bouquet, not for petals, but for a small wireless clicker. She pressed a button. The large screens flanking the stage flickered to life. The footage was intimate, shaky, from the hidden camera on her tiara. It showed the dim storage closet and the two men locked in an embrace that was far more pastoral. They jerked apart. The groom rushed toward the camera, his robes disheveled. "Kendra, wait! It's not what you think!" "Let me explain," he pleaded, frantically straightening his clothes. The recording captured only her shaky, silent breathing. Then the youth pastor stepped into frame, his face cold and stern. "Don't do this." His voice hissed on the speakers. "Just pretend you saw nothing. If you say a word, no one will believe you." The screen went black. In the stunned silence of the church, the groom's face was a mirror of the horror on the screen. A wave of appalled gasps and cries of disbelief erupted from the pews. The maid of honor shrieked. The bride stood perfectly still, a statue in white, and delivered her final line. "This isn't a wedding. It's an unveiling." Now let's rewind the tape. Back before the stained glass window shattered from the inside out. Back when her name was just Kendra, a 28-year-old vlogger whose life was documented in carefully curated clips. Off camera, she was the steady one. The friend you called at 2 a.m. when your world fell apart. The one who showed up with tacos and no questions asked. She believed in the quiet goodness of people because she practiced it relentlessly, anonymously. She met him during a rainstorm, huddled under the same awning. Damien. He sold custom motorcycles, his hands always faintly smudged with grease, and he spoke about his troubled past with a raw honesty that felt like a gift. He said he'd recently found a new path at a vibrant Pentecostal church downtown. Kendra, who carried a simple personal faith like a smooth stone in her pocket, saw his searching as a strength. She welcomed him into her world. She became his biggest cheerleader. He started attending the Rock Pentecostal ministry, and that's where Pastor Lewis entered the scene. Young, magnetic, with a smile that could sell salvation, he took Damien under his wing. Initially, she was grateful. The late-night talks at the pastor's office, discipleship. The weekend retreats without phones, spiritual immersion. She filmed content about her wedding planning, her smile bright, while a tiny cold seed of doubt took root in her gut. The signs were subtle, the kind you have to squint to see. How Damien's phone would instantly flip over when she entered the room. The way Pastor Lewis's hand would linger on Damien's shoulder a beat too long, his gaze holding a possessiveness that felt anything but holy. One evening, she stopped by the church with dinner expecting to find Damien alone. Through the slightly open door of the media room, she saw them, heads bent close together over a Bible, but the energy between them was tense, intimate. She backed away silently, her heart hammering a frantic rhythm of denial. She drove home that night with a sick feeling she couldn't articulate, crying tears of confusion. By sunrise, she had masterfully gaslit herself. "You're being jealous, insecure. This is what a strong spiritual bond looks like," she insisted, burying her intuition 6 feet deep. The wedding plans accelerated. She chose a bold red for the bridesmaids' dresses, planned her POV vlog shots. But the devil isn't always a roaring lion. Sometimes he's the silent third person in a conversation, the shadow in a room full of light. 2 days before the wedding, Pastor Lewis insisted on one final, private, counseling session for Damien alone, to clear any lingering spiritual obstacles, he'd said, his tone leaving no room for argument. When Damien returned, he was distant, agitated. That night, as Kendra packed her overnight bag for her mother's house, she looked at her hidden cameras, the tiara, the necklace. They were supposed to capture joy. Instead, they became her insurance policy against the holy nightmare she was about to walk into.
The last few days before the wedding were a strange performance. On the surface, everything was perfect. Kendra laughed with her friends, drank tea with her mother, and prayed for a happy marriage. But inside, she felt a cold, heavy weight. The night before the wedding, she had a terrible dream. In the dream, she was walking down the aisle in her beautiful white dress. But when she reached the altar, she looked down and saw the dress was now a deep, bloody red. Everyone in the church, all her friends and family, turned their backs on her at the same time. She woke up crying, her heart pounding. She told herself it was just nerves, but a part of her knew it was more. Damien always said Pastor Lewis had changed his life. At first, Kendra thought this was a beautiful thing. She believed in the power of faith to heal a broken past. But over time, something felt wrong. The change in Damien wasn't peaceful or happy. It was intense and secretive. He stopped laughing at her jokes. He seemed nervous all the time. He would avoid looking at himself in the mirror. One morning, she saw fresh scratches on his arm. When she asked what happened, he said he'd gone for a prayer walk with Pastor Lewis in the woods behind the church and tripped. Kendra didn't even know there were woods behind the church. It was a small thing, but it stuck in her mind. Another night, she called him again and again. He didn't answer for 3 hours. Finally, he texted back, was in deep prayer with Pastor Lewis. God is doing big things. Deep prayer in a dark, empty church at midnight? The explanation felt like a lie. The doubt grew from a feeling into something real a few days later. She was putting his gym bag in her car when she saw it. It was a long white robe, crumpled up at the bottom of the bag. It wasn't a normal priest's robe. It was simpler, made of a rough fabric. It smelled strange, like old incense and dirt. When she held it up, Damien rushed over and grabbed it from her hands. His face was pale. "It's for a church play," he said quickly. "Pastor Lewis is helping me with a role." The answer came too fast. It felt rehearsed. Later that week, she saw Pastor Lewis and asked him about the play. He just smiled, a tight, cold smile, and said, "Damien is a very committed member of our flock." He didn't confirm the play. He didn't deny it. He said nothing, and in that silence, Kendra heard everything. They were sharing a secret, and she was not invited. On the last Sunday before the wedding, Kendra sat alone in the church. Damien was up front with the pastor. When Pastor Lewis started his sermon, his voice was different. He preached about temptation, but he didn't talk about the usual things like greed or lying. He said the most dangerous temptation is the curiosity to uncover what God has chosen to keep hidden. As he said these words, he looked directly at Kendra. His eyes were hard. A cold chill passed through the room, even though the windows were closed. Kendra felt the words were meant for her, a warning. She stood up and walked out before the service ended. She didn't look back. She went home and sat in a cold bath for a long time, thinking. One question played over and over in her mind, a question she had been too afraid to ask. Who is he really marrying? Me or Pastor Lewis? The thought wouldn't leave her. The morning of the wedding arrived, but it didn't feel like a happy day. The air was still and heavy. The sky was a dull gray. At her sister's house, people were buzzing with excitement, but Kendra felt completely separate from it all. The makeup artist called her lucky. Her sister zipped up the wedding dress with a smile. Photographers took pictures, but Kendra's hands wouldn't stop shaking. She looked at her reflection, and the woman staring back seemed like a stranger, her eyes full of fear. At 10:27 a.m., the cars left for the church. Her phone buzzed. A text from Damien. "I'm here. Can't wait to see you." She didn't write back. 15 minutes later, they arrived. She stepped out of the car, adjusted the tiny camera hidden in her tiara, and walked toward the church doors. She was ready to document her wedding day, but she was also ready for the truth. The Rock Pentecostal Ministry wasn't an old stone chapel. It was a modern building with a huge parking lot and a bright, welcoming sign. This was where Kendra had found her faith, where she thought she would start her new life. The lead bridesmaid got out of the car first. Her father was waiting by the main doors, smiling. The photographer asked her to wait for one last photo before she made her entrance. As she waited, she reached up and subtly tapped the tiny, almost invisible button on her tiara, activating the recording. She was a vlogger, after all. She wanted to capture every moment of her walk to the altar. As she sat there, a sudden, nervous need to use the restroom hit her. She decided to use the private one in the bridal suite. Without telling anyone, she slipped out of the car and entered the church through a side door. The huge auditorium was empty and silent before the service. Her footsteps echoed as she walked quickly down the hall. As she passed the closed door of the storage closet near the bridal room, she froze. Muffled sounds seeped from underneath the door, a low gasp followed by a soft moan. Her body went cold. The restroom was forgotten. Her hand moved on its own, slowly turning the storage closet doorknob.
The door swung open. What she saw stole the air from her lungs. There they were, Damien and Pastor Lewis. They weren't praying. They were locked in a tight embrace, their clothes in disarray. Pastor Lewis's suit jacket was on the floor. Damien's shirt was unbuttoned. One of them whispered something, a low, intimate sound that was utterly foreign in this place. They hadn't heard the door open, but when they saw her standing there, everything froze. Damien jerked back, his face a mask of pure panic. "Kendra, wait, it's not what you think. Let me explain," he pleaded, frantically straightening his clothes. She didn't speak, only a choked sob escaped her. Then Pastor Lewis stepped forward, his face hardening. "Don't do this," his voice hissed. "Just pretend you saw nothing. If you say a word, no one will believe you." Kendra didn't scream. She didn't cry. She just looked at them, her eyes moving from Damien's terrified face to Pastor Lewis's stern glare, burning the image into her memory. Then she turned around. She walked away, closing the door softly behind her. She didn't look back. No one saw her return to the bridal car. No one asked why she sat perfectly still inside for the next few minutes, staring at nothing. No one could hear that the silence inside her was now a roaring storm. What she did next wasn't a frantic reaction. It was a calm, precise plan. She quietly asked her sister to fix her smudged makeup. She looked at her reflection and saw a different woman, harder. She had the evidence on her hidden cameras. She had two choices, run or see this through. She decided to walk down the aisle. The white gown was no longer a symbol of purity, it was her armor. As she stepped out of the car to take her father's arm, she was no longer just a bride. She was a woman walking into a battle, ready to unveil the truth. The door to her old life clicked shut. Not her heart, not her hope, just her decision to stop pretending. Outside, the upbeat worship music began. Guests stood, smiling in anticipation. The groomsmen straightened their ties. Pastor Lewis smoothed his suit jacket and smiled. Damien grinned, looking toward the back of the church. They all expected to see a bride in white. They were wrong. The large doors swung open, and a dead silence fell instantly. A wave of confused whispers and sharp gasps replaced the music, because there she stood, Kendra. No veil, no father by her side, no smile. Just her, alone, in her full white wedding gown. But her posture was different. Her shoulders were straight, her head was high. She didn't walk down the aisle. She moved through it, each step firm and deliberate, her eyes fixed ahead. The path was decorated with flowers, but it was clear this was no longer a wedding march. This was a confrontation, and she was no longer just the bride. She was the one in control. When she reached the front, she didn't turn to Damien or Pastor Lewis. She faced the stunned congregation. Her voice, when it came through the microphone, was steady and cold. "You're here for a wedding, but what happened in the storage closet 30 minutes ago wasn't holy." She didn't raise a phone. She simply lifted the small clicker from her bouquet. She pressed the button. The large screens on either side of the stage lit up. The footage from her tiara camera was shaky but clear. It showed the door opening, the two men pulling apart in panic. The audio was crisp, Damien's voice pleading, "Wait, let me explain." Then Pastor Lewis's voice, low and threatening, "Don't do this. No one will believe you." A collective cry of shock erupted from the pews. Damien took a step forward toward her, his hand outstretched. Kendra simply looked at him, and he froze. Her eyes were sharp, clear of any tears. "I came here to marry a man," she announced, her voice cutting through the chaos. "But I'm leaving having uncovered the truth about two." The crowd broke into loud murmurs. One of the bridesmaids burst into tears. The choir director looked away, ashamed. Damien stood speechless. Pastor Lewis took a step backward, his face pale. Kendra didn't wait for a response. She turned, and with everyone watching, she walked back down the aisle alone. The white train of her dress trailed behind her, not as a symbol of purity, but as a flag of victory in a war no one else had known she was fighting. She didn't cry in the car. She drove straight home, the silence in the car louder than any music. The chaos she left behind at the church was only the beginning.
That same afternoon, while people were still whispering and sharing their own shaky phone videos, Kendra went online. She didn't hide. Using her vlogger account, she posted a video titled My Wedding Day Truth. In it, she spoke calmly to the camera, explaining how she had felt something was wrong for months. Then she showed the full, unedited footage from her hidden cameras. She edited it between happy, hopeful clips from her wedding preparations. The contrast was devastating. There were two clear angles, one from her tiara, one from her necklace. The footage of Pastor Lewis hissing, "No one will believe you," was now heard by thousands, then millions. At first, the congregation was split. Some members defended Pastor Lewis online, calling Kendra a liar, seeking attention. They said the video was edited, but as the days passed, old whispers resurfaced. A former youth group member came forward, telling a local news station about strange private meetings she had had with the pastor years ago. Another family recalled their son being treated with unusual favoritism. The church leaders scrambled, holding emergency meetings, but they could not bury the truth this time. People were connecting the dots. Damien deleted his social media and disappeared from town. Pastor Lewis was formally removed from his position. Kendra lost her wedding, but she gained her freedom. The ultimate irony was complete. The very thing Pastor Lewis had said to silence her, "No one will believe you," became the reason the entire world now believed her. The hidden cameras he never knew about turned his warning into a lie heard around the world. She didn't need to send a veil back. Her truth, posted for everyone to see, was the only message that mattered. Do you think Kendra did the right thing by posting the video? If this story had you on the edge of your seat, make sure to like, share, and subscribe for more powerful stories like this. Drop a comment below with your city and country. Let us know how far this story has reached.